We have some major breaking news this morning, and that is that Donald Trump's enablers, which I would list as all elected Republicans, maybe save one or two, are allowing a complete, deranged, psychopathic maniac man who is in the late stages of dementia run the most powerful nation in the world. That is the breaking news. And it should be breaking news every morning because on Easter Sunday, yesterday morning, Donald Trump put up what has to be, I don't know, something that even shocks me, threatening a war crime using profanity and sounding like he is the full grown physical man with a little angry, stupid, spoiled 9-year-old boy inside. And no offense to 9-year-old boys or 9-year-old girls. Children are great. He hasn't grown up though. Let me show you this. Donald Trump on Easter Sunday posted this, the least Christian message, something that I really don't think Jesus could get behind. Let me read this to you. Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the fucking straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump. Let's just unpack this here. What he's saying is that he will have the United States bomb power plants and bridges. This is civilian infrastructure. So much for his plan to rescue the Iranians from their tyrannical leaders. He would now make life more than miserable, but dangerous, deadly, and life so incredibly painful for the people who we claim to be wanting to help. But of course, that is not his goal. He just wants the oil, something he has also said, something he also added in an early morning tweet, Truth Social. Now, saying praise be Allah, of course, is an insult to the Muslim community, to Muhammad. Of course, Allah is the Arabic name used for the Prophet Muhammad, and it is taunting and juvenile. And it does not actually and would not actually work in any effort to de escalate. But his goal isn't de escalate. He lives from minute to minute, feeding his own fragile ego. And that's not my problem. We're well beyond trying to psychoanalyze or diagnose people. I'm not a psychiatrist. No one who meets him can know for sure. And quite honestly, I don't care what is going on in his mind. I care what's going on in the Oval Office. And as a legal matter, there is a way to remove him, and it's called impeachment. And the cowards in the Republican Congress refuse to do it. Is the 25th Amendment available? Yes. But if you actually read it, you'll see it's a temporary fix, and it's much more difficult to get the cabinet to remove him. There's many steps, and ultimately the way to do this, the easier way, which is impeachment, would be impeachment in the House. You just need a simple majority, right? We would just need a few Republicans to sign on to this. And then, of course, conviction through the trial in the Senate. There is the problem. We've been talking about it for months. What is happening here is not due to Donald Trump. Let's be clear. One single man possesses absolutely no authority. What gives him the authority is the people around him, the power he wields, as well as his mob boss tendencies to threaten death, And, ask Jeff Epstein. Ask Jeff Epstein. I'm not saying Donald Trump had him killed. I'm saying the Trump administration did nothing to protect him in prison so that he was either murdered or committed suicide. What is the difference? This is a dangerous person because people let him stay in power. There is a way to remove him. Any of them. We would just need a handful of them. Not a handful, right? We need 60 votes in the Senate. This is happening because they like what they see. And what they see is this insane anti-Islamic, also anti-Semitic, I will add to that, anti-woman, anti-everything but himself man, because they see their own power aligned with his. These are dangerous people whose sense of self-importance is more important than any value for human life. I want to say that there are Democrats speaking up, and let me give you an example. Rebecca Ballant, who is the Congresswoman from Vermont. Vermont has one seat. I will play what she had to say right here. Let's go.
I just want to fly under the radar and hope that he doesn't tweet about them or truth about them. It's all about their self-preservation. And so, no, I don't expect that. I would like to see that, but it's usually only just, one or two people in either chamber, and it's usually, very, very muted. This is outrageous behavior from this president. And I know that we've said it before on this show and others that if President Biden or President Obama had said anything remotely like this, it would be nonstop coverage on every single channel, and everyone in the other side of the aisle in the House and the Senate would be howling about it and demanding that they step down. That's the reality. And so, no, they continue to let us down with their lack of courage, with their lack of moral compass. And they're an embarrassment. They're an embarrassment to the country that they represent Americans and yet do not stand up for them.
Tis true. This is where we are. Now, apparently, Donald Trump is planning some kind of address today. Who knows? He needs to show his face, as he has not been seen in public since his crazy market crashing speech last was it Tuesday night, and he's addressing the nation apparently today, and I think it's sometime in, I don't know, in the middle. Isn't he saying it's going to happen in the middle of the day today? Who knows? So many of us will have other things that we need to do. Now, let's be clear. Someone said here, he blew off 2 potential Easter services to play golf and have his motorcade drive around so he could see the places where he wants to put more monuments to himself. Now, someone just said, he said in his speech, "You're Christians, but you're smart." So today at noon, thank you, Reginald Johnson. Today at noon, Donald Trump is giving some kind of speech. I have a job, so I will be doing that. He apparently has one job, and he is failing at that. Now, I want to pivot to before we circle back to what we can do about this. I want to pivot to what real leadership looks like, and let me talk about Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Remember, like Donald Trump, Mamdani is very focused on the fact that there's a problem with how our system is operating and how our public funds are allocated as well. First, we need to tax the rich, and by that I mean the 100 millionaires and billionaires. And in New York, I know New York is a highly taxed city in terms of income tax, and of course the state has its own taxes and the federal government. But living in New York City is something I've done in the past. It's living in an incredible community, incredible space with cultural and social and artistic diversity where you can enjoy these public parks like Central Park, and you have access to theater and sports. And, it's just kind of an incredibly enriching place. And salaries are substantially higher there. So, it makes sense in order to preserve this place that taxes would be higher, and which is his goal, but even more importantly, that public resources, the funds, be used in ways that help the many and not specifically just the few. So one of the things Zoran Mandami promised to do, and I kind of love sharing this with you, is do things like deal with potholes. Anyone, and I know this applies to everyone who drives a car, hates potholes. And in a city like New York, there are many of them. And so you have him put this up on Blue Sky, promises made, promises kept. And this is someone named Paul Williams. This is, we now have an answer to the question of, is New York City just doing good social media posts about service delivery, or is service delivery actually changing? And these are the pothole orders that are closed. That means that potholes are filled. And you start with January of this year, and the blue line is 2026. The gray line is 2024, and the green line is 2025. What this indicates is that under Mandami's administration, there has actually been an increase in the number of potholes that have been repaired, right? And what you can see is that it is quite the opposite under the Eric Adams administration. If you look at this under Adams, you have the number of orders closed is decreasing, meaning either there are more complaints and they're kind of not keeping up with it, or they literally did almost nothing. So here we go. New York closed basically in March of 2026, close to 4,000. That's 3,946. It's the highest single month of potholes orders that had been closed. Okay, so and maybe I'm reading this chart wrong. Maybe they started, maybe this actually, it's not that they're going, I'm sorry, the number of potholes isn't going up. What I'm seeing is under the Eric Adams administration, it's steadily averaged anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 potholes. So, to me, they're stepping up the pace. You might say, who is Paul E. Williams? I don't know. I'm guessing he is someone who works for, okay, I guess he's Paul E. Williams works for the Center for Public Enterprise. I'm not actually sure. I see. It's building a better public sector. So it looks like it's a think tank. Anyway, so to me, that's a study in contrast. I mean, Mandami also wished us all, or everyone in New York, I should say, a happy Easter in a very respectful way, cares about repairing infrastructure. You never hear about Donald Trump doing any building other than for himself. Tears down the East Wing to build this giant ballroom, wants to build this kind of triumphant arch as a tribute to himself, right? The man put Kristi Noem in charge of DHS, and she was not paying for disaster relief. Donald Trump wants to bomb bridges. He wants to bomb power plants. He is not interested in people's lives whatsoever. And the contrast is real. I have not heard of all these millionaires and 100 millionaires and billionaires who were supposed to be leaving New York when Mandami came in. Haven't heard a peep out of them. Okay, that is a study in contrast. Now let's return for a moment to Donald Trump and to what people are beginning to fear. Some of what you see in his True Social post yesterday seems like it is laying the groundwork for some people fear a nuclear bomb dropped on Iran. I certainly hope this isn't the case. We know, though, reporting when General Kelly was Donald Trump's chief of staff, that he was gunning for, not Kelly, Trump, using nuclear weapons on North Korea. But Kelly came in there and convinced Donald Trump that he was a brilliant negotiator. And maybe this is what the fluffers are always trying to do with Donald. I hope there is someone in there fluffing him and saying that this would ruin his legacy. Now, what I'm concerned about is Tim Schneider, the professor from Yale who moved to University of Toronto, who wrote the book on tyranny, had a social media post and also a Substack article that he wrote concerning one of the motivations for Donald Trump's taunting language here. He is what Schneider is afraid of. He's afraid that Donald Trump is trying to provoke Iran or sleeper cells to engage in some kind of terrorist attack in the United States. And whether that is, whether he has to do that by some kind of nuclear weapons there or something else that would provoke that kind of response so that he can create chaos around November. Now, I've seen some responses to Tim Snyder's piece, and what annoys me with these responses is you see, and it's mostly a lot of people who I respect on Blue Sky are calling Snyder irresponsible. Saying, that he, this is like, they're comparing him to QAnon, and they're saying, why is he stirring up what they're calling, they're calling a conspiracy theory and so on. And these are the same, they're kind of like, calm down. This isn't, it's not going to happen. Why are you saying this? Now, here's the deal. I want to be super clear about it. The language they're using is these are, young men, not super young, younger than me, right? Using the same eye-rolling, dismissive language toward Tim Snyder that people did when so many of us said Donald Trump is going to overturn Roe versus Wade, and they rolled their eyes. When so many of us said he's not going to go peacefully, he's going to try to fight not to leave office, which he did. When people worried that he was going to bomb Iran. So here's the deal. What I've learned about, you learn this from the financial crisis, it's called black swan events. Even if there is only a 1% chance of something so catastrophic, you don't treat someone like Tim Snyder as if he is QAnon. Okay, so let me share with you right now that piece. And I'm going to drop it also into the chat, because this goes to the heart of the kind of thing that we need to be knowledgeable about and not dismiss. And hold on, I'm going to post this in the chat, and I'm going to move this a little smaller so you can see it. It's called so I can sort of see it better on my screen. The next coup attempt. Okay, drop this into the chat, and now I'm going to. This is what we're looking at, right? Now, what I want to say is when people say, don't, this is terrible, don't, and they dismiss it. Don't look at this. This is a conspiracy theory. I don't know what their agenda is. Maybe it's just to be smarter than him. Maybe because it scares the hell out of them. Maybe he thinks that they think it's unlikely. But what I want to tell you is the motivation for Tim Snyder raising this issue is because he's an expert on authoritarianism, and because, and this is important, and because we have an opportunity to act to prevent it. Things like going to the May 1st rally. I don't appreciate when people tell us to calm down. I mean, It's not about being calm. We live our life every day. I don't want people to panic, but I would never lie to you. And I don't think there is zero possibility that this will happen. I think it's unlikely, but unlikely is 50-50. I think we can stop this. So let me tell you what Tim Schneider said. So and I think that maybe the best way to talk about this is to use. It was a multi-part tweet. So I think instead of kind of pulling things from the article, I think this is super helpful. So he did a 17-part not tweet, but True Social post. And I'm going to drop that link into the chat, and I'm going to show you how that looks right now, because I think that would be helpful to see that. Okay, so here we go. Here is his True Social. I keep saying this. I'm sorry. Blue Sky. He doesn't go to True Social. Here's Tim Schneider on Blue Sky. So he says, given Trump's Easter threats to carry out new war crimes in Iran, we should think 1 or 2 steps ahead about a coup attempt connected to the war and then deter it. Okay, so that is what he was saying. Okay, so what can we do? Tim Schneider adds and asks, why is Trump so enthusiastic about destroying Iranian civilian infrastructure? Schneider adds, it won't win the war. So what he argues here is that one of the possibilities is Trump is trying to provoke a response from Iran that he can use for his own purposes. And as Schneider adds, provocation is not a complex form of politics. He anticipates that we all might think that Donald Trump is not smart enough to have thought of this. Schneider says he has. Schneider says, and exploiting a wartime incident to try to seize total power is normal tyrannical behavior. It's on us not to dodge that historical fact. Schneider goes on saying, if we think 1 step ahead, the purpose of the war crimes that he is signaling is to, he said, induce Iran to carry out a terrorist attack in the United States. He thinks Trump can then make us focus away from what's going on in the Middle East to the crisis at home, that he will then put armed forces in our cities. Schneider adds that the fact that Hegseth is Secretary of Defense, quote unquote, points in the same direction. And what Schneider says is Hegseth might be the only person around who would be enthusiastic about a self-invasion. Schneider moves on to say, this may seem odd to you, but Trump admires Putin, and Putin came to power, Schneider reminds us, through a terrorist attack in Russia that Putin blamed on Muslims. Okay, so that was thinking 1 step ahead. Schneider also added, what if we think 2 steps ahead? Iran does not have to do anything, Schneider says, and Trump could themselves stage an incident in the United States and blame Iran. This is a little crazy, false flag here. I want to dismiss that. Honest to God, you guys. Schneider says, please resist the urge to dismiss this scenario. He pointed out that in 1999, the terrorist attack that brought Putin to power was a false flag. And then that the Russian Secret Service bombed apartment buildings and killed Russians. This gives me the chills. Again, this is, I think, the part of his tweet thread on Blue Sky that makes people uncomfortable. I'm just telling you, these are the facts of what Putin did. Would Trump do that? I don't know. Now, as Schneider points out, Trump admires Putin. He also admires Orban. And to be clear, we know Orban is about to lose the election based on polling in Hungary, excuse me. Based on polling, he doesn't stand a chance. So what Schneider is saying is he's right now carrying out a false flag terrorist incident to stay in power. And he's now claiming to foil the terrorist plot. Okay, fine. So here's the good news, because all this is making, me uncomfortable. You can see me sort of telling what Snyder says, me wrestling with it, right? I want to be clear. Acknowledging his work also allows us to wrestle with it. I'm neither going to say this is likely to happen or just dismiss it out hand. I want to wrestle with it. I want to be curious about it. Okay, it's important. So Snyder says these kinds of things only happen. These kinds of coups only happen if we, the people, choose to go along. Okay, but if we deny that it's possible and just say, oh, it will never happen, we invite it. So he now shifts both in the piece that he wrote and in this thread on Blue Sky to what we can do. So one thing is he believes talking about it, sketching it out so people can see it is helpful, he believes. Also, preparing lawyers and judges to prosecute coup plotters, fine, we know about that. He also adds that Trump is right now in a very weak position. And if he does this, it will look like a desperate move. Why is it important to call this out? For some people who are like, oh my God, this would never happen. It's important because if that happens, we don't want to immediately think if there's a terrorist attack, one, it could have been provoked, or two, as Snyder said, it could be a false flag, or it could be both, right? It's kind of like we don't know, but we don't want to automatically rally around Trump and the flag saying everyone's against us. We want to recognize who provoked this and or who created it. Snyder adds that neutrality is not possible, that, and I'm going to quote Snyder, either we deny such things are possible as they unfold and become silent accomplices, or we lean forward, keep our eyes open, and prepare to act. What he says here, and this is key, is this. And this is what I want to share with you right now. It's this: Mayday, no kings and no billionaires. Okay. This is important. We need to show up. I hope when we show up, it's not too late by then. But let's be clear what Mayday is about. And let me drop this into the chat just in case Deb did not grab it. She's usually many steps. Speaking of being many steps ahead, she's often many steps ahead of me here. Okay, let me tell you about no kings and no billionaires. We've talked about this before. This is this Mayday event. No work, no schools, no shopping. I know. Lots of people, I get it, need to, I think there's this thing saying, well, people need to go to work or they won't get paid. And isn't this classist? Look, if no one's going into the stores, if you have the kind of job where you're called in to work with a schedule that's not guaranteed, you're not going to be called in anyway. But I understand not everyone can make this choice. Let's look, though, at what this general strike looks like. So it's May 1st is already International Workers' Day. And that, May Day, May 1st is already a labor holiday conceptually, International Workers' Day, not the actual Labor Day, which happens in the fall. So we're talking about no work, no school, and no shopping. There's going to be rallies and marches, including with some partners in San Jose. Other peaceful disruptions is what Indivisible is talking about. And they're talking about here that the goal is a shift from mobilizing to organizing. So we're ready to respond when it matters, to ICE activating in our communities, they write, to attacks on our elections, right? And to the ongoing consolidation of power by Trump regime and its allies. So this has a long history. It builds on what the 2006 Day Without Immigrants, which were Black-led campaigns that forced corporate change and so on. And here are the demands, right? The demands include from workers, students, and families across the country, tax the rich so our families not their fortunes come first. That's the first demand. Second demand, ICE out. No unchecked federal enforcement power in our communities. 3, expand democracy, not corporate control, defend free and fair elections. So this sounds like good goal. So now I want to shift now from what's happening in the Middle East to what's happening right here in terms of consolidation of the power of white collar criminals and those corporations that are committing fraud, right? Not all businesses are bad, but the idea of corporate control over human control of corporate management control and giant investor control over the means of production, it's not exactly so what we had in mind with free markets, actually. Okay, so let me talk about one key thing here. And so this is a really amazing piece that I'm trying to find now from ProPublica. And ProPublica put out, here it is, 1 second. I shared this on my True Social yesterday, but I can just find it. ProPublica put out a piece last night, that was incredible. And it is about the price, and I don't mean financial, I mean in terms of community safety that we are paying because of the shift in emphasis to go after immigrants in this country. Immigrants, attacking immigrants, prosecuting those who've overstayed their visas, whether or not, and I mean, usually not, without concern about whether they are contributing to the society or whether they are violent criminals. And so I want to share this with you. This is an amazing story, and here we go. And again, I will drop this in the chat. Our friends at ProPublica do, and I say friends, I have a few friends there, but I just mean our friends in terms of on the side of the people, do incredible work, right? They were the ones who broke the stories about Justice Thomas and the Justice Alito, and their benefactor Harlan Crow and others. So they do, again, excellent work, and the reporters there have received Pulitzer Prizes for their reporting. Now, I'm going to back out of this shot so you can actually see this. Okay, this is the article I am sharing with you, and the headline is Trump's Justice Department dropped 23,000 criminal investigations in shift to immigration. I love this folder as an illustration. You can kind of see money crimes in the center. You can see drug crimes to the right and justice being torn apart. Nice illustration. The authors of this piece are Ken Morales and David Armstrong. Okay, guys, I'm going to stop sharing now. So, and I think I put that, did I put that in the chat? Let me just make sure. Let me drop it in here again in case I have it. Okay, so let's talk about this. The numbers are revealing, right? And the way ProPublica knows this is the Department of Justice, the lawyers, the U.S. Attorney's offices report every year how many cases, declinations, cases that they decide to drop. Okay, so here's what Ken Morales and David Armstrong reported. And actually, I saw this yesterday. It came out March 31st, but at any rate, okay. So what we are seeing is, even though, remember when Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency claimed that they were going to be rooting out federal waste, fraud, and abuse? Despite that, the Department of Justice declined to hear 900 cases that dealt with federal program or procurement fraud. Let me tell you this, federal program and procurement fraud are white-collar crime / public corruption offenses that are usually pretty easy to prove. They are standards here. When you are getting federal money, when you're getting federal money, or in the case of procurement, when you're submitting your receipts to get paid under a federal contract, and they're fraudulent or they're misstated. These are crimes that are common. These are crimes that usually they pay to prosecute because the government collects billions of dollars from procurement fraud cases, for example, under the False Claims Act. Okay, so let's just be clear what this article is about. It's a little bit about Pam Bondi's legacy, but I don't think Todd Blanche is going to do much better. So Pam Bondi, when she became Attorney General, she started shutting down pending criminal cases in what ProPublica called a record pace. One example, talking about corporate crime, there was an investigation of a nursing home in Virginia where there were, a very ugly record of abusing patients. There was also cases involving fraud, probes of fraud at New Jersey labor unions. And there was also an investigation of a crypto company that was cheating investors. These are just a few examples that ProPublica is highlighting for us. And so in total, in the first 6 months of Trump's presidency, like before the summer of 2026, right? I'm sorry, what year are we at? 2025. In the first summer, just the first 6 months of Trump's presidency between January 20th, right? And July 20th, essentially, end of July, the Department of Justice dropped 23,000 criminal cases, right? This includes hundreds of investigations into terrorism, white-collar crime, drugs, and other offenses. And again, this is ProPublica's analysis. And even though, just to be clear, it's common that a new attorney general would come in and that the U.S. attorney's offices around the country, of course, you would take a look at your caseload and decide what makes sense to move forward. But this is a huge departure from what's been done in the past, in part because the orders came from on high, but also because this wasn't a result that there were just more cases of these types coming in, more referrals. So here's the example they gave. They looked at February of 2025, the first full month of the Trump administration, of Trump 2.0, and the first few weeks of Bondi being in office. 11,000 cases were declined. And this is most in a single month in more than 20 years. It is truly astonishing. And instead, what did they do? I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, right? If they dropped 23,000 criminal cases, which we have heard reported in the first 6 months, what did they do instead? I think you know the answer, right? They dropped these standard cases designed to protect us from fraud, from drug dealers, from embezzling that would affect, when you try to stop people embezzling from unions, it protects other union members, and also because of, well, anyway, you get the idea. This is protecting people from serious crimes, and instead they prosecuted 32,000 new immigration cases. Okay, you get the idea here. So it's not just this war, internal war on immigrants in this country is unjust, racist, and stupid in terms of the economy of our country, but it also is making us less safe. So I just want to point that out to you, sort of a little bit about the economics of this, not the economics, but the numbers behind that it's not I don't want to call it a zero-sum game, but there are trade-offs when you pursue, going after, harassing, trying to deport people who are brown because of what is now this right-wing white supremacist administration. Okay, folks, I've got some other pretty good legal or interesting legal news. And then we'll get to Crazy Town. Some good news. I had not seen this before, but this I think is wonderful. There were a number, and this is cases against Donald Trump. Donald Trump had a many bad days last week, as we know, right? We know that the Supreme Court is highly skeptical of his attempt to remove birthright citizenship. That we know, right? We also know that the Supreme Court, we also know that the Supreme Court does not approve of Donald Trump's tariffs, right? And we know that the Supreme Court, I shouldn't say Supreme Court, we also, we also know that federal judges, lower court federal judges say, one, stop building your ballroom without congressional approval. Another one said it's unconstitutional for you to cut funding to PBS and NPR based on the viewpoints of these stations, right? Of these networks. Okay, so this has been a very, very bad legal time frame for Donald Trump. And something that kind of slipped past my attention was the fact that just on March 31st, so just last week, a federal judge allowed civil cases brought against Donald Trump related to the January 6th attempted self-coup could move forward. They said that when they specifically focused on, remember on January 6th, when Donald Trump was giving that speech at the Ellipse and he was encouraging his supporters to be violent, even though he claimed he wasn't. Remember that speech? And this was part of the January 6th commission. The court decided that speech was not protected. First of all, that it amounted to incitement, so it wasn't protected under the First Amendment, and that it's not protected under the Supreme Court's immunity ruling, right? Remember, the U.S. Supreme Court decided right before, in the last few months before our election in 2024, that that a president could not be prosecuted even after he was out of office for acts that fell within like his core Article 2 rights, and then that there would be a presumption that he had immunity. So first of all, he's fully immune for things that his core Article 2 rights, his core, whether, and they gave examples of the pardon power, probably commander-in-chief type activity, one, and then two, that there was a presumption of immunity that could be rebutted, but it would be hard to be rebutted for activities that were part of his work life, that it was not part of his private life. And then if something was considered completely outside, that wasn't even sort of anywhere near his official duties. So there's his core powers and his sort of expanded official duties, things that were not even there outside of his official duties. In that case, no immunity. Okay, that's what the Supreme Court decided, but there wasn't enough time for Jack Smith to still bring his prosecution against the president, so he ended up dropping it, right? Okay, remember this. Now, however, civil lawsuits brought by private parties are going to continue. This is a huge ruling here. And this is amazing. The court says, that he is not immune, that he shouldn't get officials act immunity, period. So this is where we are, that these cases for now can move forward. And they build on some legal principles and earlier Supreme Court decisions. But the bottom line is the attempt to get this case dismissed did not happen. And this is important. They said that when he gave this speech on the ellipse, it was not an official act. He was speaking there essentially in his campaign capacity as an office seeker. So I think this is huge. I think we need to follow this. Now, I know that these are just civil cases, but these are important precedents because in the future, after he is out of office, we may need to prosecute Donald Trump, and it would be helpful to have precedents that actually look at and create examples of where he does not have immunity. And okay, so let us now also talk about something that the Trump administration is doing that I think is incredibly shameful. And this is let me just drop this into the chat. You know how they're trying to rewrite history. And you know that they've tried to tamp down on museums and university professors who want to speak the truth about American history. And the example I have for you is this. Politico just reported that the Holocaust Memorial Museum in DC, when Trump came into office, has taken down from its website information about American racism, and they've canceled workshops about the fragility of democracy. And specifically, there was a page on the Holocaust Memorial Museum website called Teaching Materials on Nazism and Jim Crow. And what this website accurately communicated is lesson plans that teachers could use showing, again, truthfully, that Adolf Hitler looked to the racism and Jim Crow in America as a model during his Nazi regime. So again, I'm going to read you this from Politico. This page provided lesson plans and resources about the connections between American de jure racism, legal racism, and the Nazi regime, including links to sites about African-American soldiers during World War II and Afro-Germans during the Holocaust. Now, I find this, of course, troubling, to say the least, and I think it's important for us to call it out. Okay, so one last legal point before we get to Crazy Town. And today's Crazy Town is a double scoop. I think we deserve that. Okay. So NPR is reporting out about what I'm sure you have been seeing, sports betting websites. We've also seen prediction market websites. We've seen a correlation between people being able to bet, legally bet on games, and we've seen a lot of game fixing, right? We've seen prosecutions of players who are involved in gambling conspiracies because there's so much money on the line. And making sports betting legal creates real problems. And NPR, which I just dropped in, had a story, and the headline is, this was over the weekend, when legal sports betting surges, so do Americans' financial problems. And they're talking about online sports betting surging, right? We know March Madness ends tonight. Go Blue with the game between University of Michigan Wolverines and UConn, whatever they are. Are they the Huskies? I don't know. Anyhow, Go Blue. But at any rate, the real story here is that, and I'm quoting from NPR, a growing body of evidence reveals that the sports betting boom leads to financial strain for bettors. And this was a report by the New York Fed that found that sports betting is linked to plummeting credit in more than 30 states. And the problem here is that it's often a small number of people who are doing most of the betting. Okay, so sports bettors are only about 3% of our population. But it is credit delinquencies spiked by more than 10% among sports gamblers. So this is why did this happen? Well, in sports betting became this multi-billion-dollar industry thanks to a 2018 Supreme Court decision, 6-3. It struck down a 1992 federal law that prevented most states from legalizing sports betting. So 2018, 8 years ago, we can see this. Now we're also seeing people bet on these prediction market websites about events that allow them to, well, you've seen this. It allows people to get, especially public officials and others, to get around even corporate insiders to get around the insider trading laws, etc. Okay, guys, it's now time for our double scoop of Crazy Town before we go off and have our day. Here we go. And thank you, as always, to our amazing mod squad. Jason, always, for your wonderful music. Deb for her constant, you don't see behind the scenes. She's here, and she's always giving me different ideas and communicating about what's going on in her world. She's always got the links. And of course, AJ, today is Monday. I'm not sure. I don't think AJ is here. I think she's a Tuesday, Thursday person. But AJ also, thankfully, she was at our private Zoom meeting and has our words of the day as well. Okay, so let's talk. Waffle House. Yes, you have heard this. There is a man named Greg Phillips who works for FEMA. I got to share this with you. I know you've heard this. I mean, I've been trying to ignore this, but I got to talk about it. Here's this guy, Greg Phillips. You see him, right? Okay. So this guy, Greg Phillips, here he is, and I'm just going to keep you, there he is, looking serious. But here's the headline. No one at Waffle House remembers FEMA official who says he teleported in. Okay. Greg Phillips, this official who works for the Federal Emergency Management Agency. Okay. A man who is in charge of allocating millions of dollars and has hundreds of people reporting up to him, claims that he teleported in to a Waffle House in Rome, Georgia. And I want to be clear. I love breakfast food. I've even been to a Waffle House. And I think I went to one in Atlanta and I loved it. And I can understand wanting to go to a Waffle House quite urgently, but this is insane. And I love this quote. Someone named Shastani Burge. I'm reading from the New York Times piece written by Richard Fawcett. Shastani Burge has worked for a decade as a Waffle House server in Rome, Georgia, much of it on the night shift. She said she was once punched in the face by a customer. That sounds pretty bleak. She saw someone overdose in the bathroom. One night, a man took all the steak knives and threatened the staff with them. Okay, we know it's not even a joke with the violence and the sketchiness of some Waffle Houses. We get it. They're open all night. Okay, but then Ms. Burge said, when she was asked whether she'd seen anyone teleport to the place, she said, I've seen it all, but I've never seen that. Not only that, she's never laid eyes on Greg Phillips, this FEMA official who said that he once teleported to a Waffle House in Rome, Georgia. Now, this is really crazy. And he said teleporting is no fun. And I'm just super confused. People are actually taking this guy seriously, saying that he is lying. I don't even know what to say anymore with these people. But what I do know is we've got one more thing. We did start late, so I always promise you we have to do the worst case scenario survival guide. As I've mentioned before, there's nothing in the survival guide about a lunatic threatening to bomb civilian infrastructure um, in a country in violation of international law, who is also a convicted felon on 34 felony counts involving trying to lie about a sexual encounter by covering up the books and records of a business and interfere with an election, who also has been adjudicated a rapist and has been credibly accused of being a child sexual abuser, who is also president of the United States. To me, this is the worst case scenario, and there is no card on it. But let's go to something that we can actually deal with here. This is good. How to remove a leech. Now, this is something that could be useful. I once lived on a lake that did have some leeches. Okay, 1, identify the anterior oral sucker in the small end of the leech. The small end of the leech you can kind of see is a small little pointy end. Okay, you identify that. Okay, so this is actually easy because, unlike something like we saw before, like fighting off a mountain lion, removing a leech is kind of like removing a dog tick, right? You can see it. If you're calm, this can be done. I'm hopeful on this one. Okay, 2, gently but firmly slide your fingernail toward the leech, pushing the sucker sideways. When the seal made by the oral sucker is broken, the leech will stop feeding. By feeding, it means sucking your blood. Now, of course, this was a medical procedure at one time. So if that's a medical procedure, call your doctor. If you just don't want the leech on you, I think this is good. 3, displace the posterior hind sucker in the same manner. Oh my God, I had no idea that leeches could suck from both ends. Okay, this is good. And then dispose of the leech. At this point, the leech may have securely attached itself to the finger you used to remove it. If so, flick it away as you would a piece of gum stuck to your finger. Okay, now if you care about wildlife, you might want to also let the leech go back to where you found it, the lake, or its other habitat. Or if you are in the medical profession of a certain era, maybe you want to save that leech for future medicinal purposes. Okay, guys, with that, I wish you well. Good luck in listening to today's insane speech at noon, and we will be back here tomorrow morning with all of the snark we can muster given these dangerous legal times, legal, political, and financial times. Okay, guys, have a wonderful day.
Hello, prison mates. It's the Taub show where how come everyone let's learn about what is happening in politics yesterday and today. There was hope and we are together in this democracy we work for. And again, welcome to the Taub show.